Technical Veterinary Learning Channel, honored by Prof. Ahmed Mamdouh El-Sherif, Professor of Epidemiology and Infectious Diseases, the ex-head of Department of Veterinary Medicine, the ex-Vice Dean of Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Bani Suef University, Egypt, presents today Epidemiology. We will speak in this part about disease causation. The basis for most epidemiological investigations is the assumption that disease does not occur in a random fashion. If this was not the case, it would not be necessary to identify causal relationship between potential risk factors and the disease. Disease is assumed to be influenced by multiple, potentially interacting risk factors or determinants. These can be grouped into time, place, and animal characteristics. Epidemiological investigation focus in measuring of these determinants for groups of animals or persons as a population, or group selected for certain segment within animal or personal population, and the defining characteristic is that both healthy and disease populations or segments are examined. Parameters have to be investigated include health status, other many factors as age, body condition, vaccination status, pregnancy status, behavioral status, spatial and temporal location of each person or each animal may be also relevant. Health status within a population is investigated with respect to the possible states of health of individuals or animals, such as disease, clinical or subclinical diseases, or health in individual, animal, or health. The causative agents, the causative environment, the causative surroundings have to be discussed. So, in this part, we'll discussing the different and advertisement of disease causation. Concept of disease. A disease is a particular abnormal condition that negatively affect the structure or function of all part of the body, and that is not due to an immediate external injury. Diseases are often known to be medical conditions that are associated with specific symptoms and signs. A disease may be caused by external factors such as pathogen or by internal dysfunction. In many cases, terms such as disease, disorder, morbidity, sickness, and illness are used to identify the name of disease and the alter of the health. However, there are situations when specific terms are considered preferable. Disease in terminology broad refer to any condition that impairs the normal functioning of the body. For these reasons, diseases are associated with dysfunctioning of the body, normal homeostatic process, and the term commonly is used refer especially to infectious diseases, which are clinically evident diseases that result from presence of pathogenic microbial agent, including viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, multicellular organism, prion, and apparent protein and infectious or colonization that does not and will not produce clinically evident impairment of normal functioning, such as the presence of normal bacteria and yeast in the gut or a passenger virus. It is not considered a disease, but in contrast, an infection that is asymptomatic during its incubation period, but expected to produce symptoms later on, is usually considered a disease. Non-infectious disease are all other diseases, including most forms of cancer, heart disease, genetic disease, or internal diseases. Acquired diseases is one of the began at some point during one lifetime, as opposed to disease that was already present at birth, which is a congenital one. Acquired sounds like it could mean caught via contagion, but it is simply mean acquired sometimes after birth. It also sounds like it could imply secondary diseases, but acquired disease can be a primary disease. Diseases have some divisions such as acute, chronic, or subacute, congenital, and genetic, hereditary, heterogenic, idiopathic, and incurable diseases. So, concept of disease can be summarized as function of an organ or tissue or some body parts are deranged. Here, the picture of a cow with lumpy jaw, where this disease alters the mastication and movement of their jaws, or a maladjustment of any organism to the environment. Presence of ascariasis here in this intestine is maladjustment of presence of such parasite in such organ, or deterioration of the body or part of it from normal purposes and or function, such as this woody cow will not produce either meat nor milk. A cause. Webster Dictionary defines literally a cause as something which has an effect. A cause. Epidemiological research is devoted to searching for causal factors that influence one risk disease. Ideally, the goal is to identify a cause so that appropriate veterinarian or public health actions might be taken. One can argue that epidemiology can never approve a causal relationship between an exposure and a disease, since much of epidemiology is based on ecological reasoning. Nevertheless, epidemiology often provides enough information to support effective action. Examples date from the removal of the handle from the broad sand pump following to John Snow investigation of cholera in Golden Square area at London 1854 to the withdrawal of a vaccine against rotaviruses in 1999 until global announcement about eradication of cattle plague at 2011, all of them done after epidemiologists found that it increased the risk of intersusception, a potentially life-threatening condition. Just as often, epidemiology and laboratory science coverage to provide the evidence needed to establish causation. For example, we were able to identify a variety of risk factors during an outbreak of signs of pneumonia among cattle farm or persons in certain segment of population. So, a cause in epidemiology is considered to be something that alerts the frequency of disease, health, and production status or associated factors in a population or in a certain segment in it. Applications of knowing causation generate knowledge for disease prevention and control. So, because we are knowing the causative agent of cattle plague, we produce vaccine for it, using it for a long time, and then design a prevention and control program of it. This leads to globally discarded of this disease with FAO announcement at 2011, distinguishing the natural from other causes of death. Death is the end of any creature. It may be caused due to end of its life or due to causation of diseases such as heart attack, such as tuberculosis, and others, distinguishing natural from causes of loss or reduced productivity per unit or per person, such as founding of mastitis in a farm may be cause losses of the milk production by about 10% or 20%, but as a general, we said that if one cow have a mastitis in its life, for once it lost about 25% of its production. Also, knowing of causation applied in establishing models of transmission and spread, and this is noted in the last epidemic of COVID-19, where by studying the characteristics of the virus as it transmitted through droplets and other excretions of infected humans, we use the personal protective equipment such as masks, overhead shield, and gloves. So, application of knowing of causation is very important for continuity of the life. Causation of the disease pass by a long way of theories. At 19th century, disease causation theories were contagion theory, supernatural theory, personal behavior theory, and miasma theory. This will be discussed in details after a while. We can summarize the contagion theory in the following terms. Gustave Le Bon, 1896, suggests that crowds leads to exertion of a hypnotic influence on their members, which combined with anonymity of belonging to a large group of people results illogically emotionally charged behavior. A behavior of a crowd is an emergent probability of the people coming together and not a probability of themselves. This is one of the most acceptable theory during that time. During 19th theory, also supernatural theory as product of animism, which imbued all body changes with an evil spirit. This theory suggests that disease could be produced by witches, superhuman entities, and spirits of dead person, or by evil. This is acceptable in Europe during the latter plague epidemics at the end of 18th and the beginning of 19th century. Miasma theory, it is an accepted during the late of 18th and the beginning of 19th centuries. Explain that any disease occur due to bad air who produced from decaying materials. This theory used to explain cholera pandemic in United Kingdom at the 18th century. Personal behavior theory, founded at Victorian era in England at the time between 22 of June 1837 up to 20 of January 1920. Victorian values emerged in all society classes and reached all factors of Victorian living, which can be classed as religious, morality, industrial work ethic, and personal improvement. All plays and all literature during that time, including all the classics, like that of Shakespeare, were colonized of Newtonist or Bowdlerized. Progress in human life took a long time from research and investigations from some of the people who took it upon themselves to live human being in a welfare, health, and ease in different aspects of life. Therefore, theories of disease occurring differed in the 20th century from what it was in previous. In 20th century, there are 4 theories about disease causation: germ theory, lifestyle theory, environmental theory, and multi-causal theory. All these theories will be discussed after a while. Germ theory of disease. The germ theory of disease is currently accepted scientifically for many diseases. It states the microorganism known as a pathogen or germs can lead to the disease. These small organisms, too small to see without magnification, invade animals, human, or other live beings. Their growth and reproduction within their hosts can cause disease. Germ may refer to not just a bacterium, but any type of microorganism or even non-living pathogen that can cause a disease, such as fungi, viruses, rickettsia, mycoplasma, prions, or viroids. Diseases caused by pathogen are called as infectious diseases. Even when a pathogen is the principal cause of a disease, environmental and hereditary factors often influence the severity of the disease and whether a potential host individual become infected when exposed to the pathogen. Basic forms of germ theory were proposed in the late Middle Age by physicians, including Ibn Sina at 1025 AD, Ibn Katima, and Ibn al-Khatib in the 14th century. Guillermo Francesco in 1544 and expanded upon Marcus von Paulins in 1762. However, such views were held in insane in Europe, but in Islamic countries it be acceptable. By early of 19th century, smallpox vaccination was completed in Europe, though doctors at that time were unaware of how it blocked or how extend the principle to other diseases. Similar treatments have been prevalent in India from just before 1000 AD, a transitional period begun in the late 1815s with the work of Louis Pasteur. This work was later extended to Robert Koch in 1818. By the end of that decade, germ theory became the most acceptable theory for inducing diseases in different live beings. Here, the picture of E. coli as a germ, and by infection, it causes a disease which course according to infected organs will be differ, and symptoms will be enteritis, meningitis, navel ill, and mastitis in animals. E. coli is cause food poisoning in human being. Treatment and vaccination of animals by K99, no-fluor, rehydrin solutions, and in humans by application of antibiotics for those taken during food poisoning. So, germ theory is a modern and acceptable theory. We are working with it. Lifestyle exposure theory is a model that possessed that the likelihood of an animal or individuals will suffer a personal or animal diseases or victimization depends upon the concept of lifestyle. Lifestyle theory is constructed upon several premises. Explain adaptation as a part of 5 elements of lifestyle exposure model. Individual and animal adapt to their rule expectations and constraint to develop regular behavior pattern, attitudes, and beliefs about impact adaptation. This can be explained in this diagram. This is a lung and chest of an cattle infected by tuberculosis. This has come from this herd after exposure to a newly purchased cattle that enter the herd without examination because of neglection, lack of veterinary medical knowledge, and absence of control program. Environmental theory was presented by Nightingale in 1859. In fact, it has been written over 150 years ago and can be regarded as a limitation on the consistency of its own concepts. But even though it endorses many current actions, some factors may be identified as outdated. Nightingale concepts of theory are brief, simple, and easy to understand. it's still acceptable to practice today, even during the 21st century. It makes the work more effectively by using our own intuition about patient or animal care and the modification of environment with collaboration between different persons. Environmental theory identified 5 environmental factors: fresh air, pure water, efficient drainage, cleanliness, sanitation, light, and direct sunlight as an important for occurrence of health. Florence Nightingale environmental theory defined the act of utilizing the environment of the patient to or animal to assist him in his recovery. Nightingale provide care to any disease and wounded ill soldiers during the German war. Nightingale defined 13 canons of environment, and she gave detailed description of each except her major canon, including ventilation, light, noise, cleanliness of room, walls, bed and bedding, personal cleanliness, and taking food. All of these environmental factors are acceptable today and act as the same rule in occurrence of the disease as the causative agent itself. Multi-causal theory. It is a conceptual model that describes causal mechanisms of any system. Improve study designs by providing clear rules for deciding which independent variables need to be included and controlled for help with the question of external validity, whether results from one study apply to an unstudied population. This will allow data from multiple studies to be merged together in certain of circumstances to answer questions that cannot be answered by any individual data set. This is like an example of why the large epidemic of lumpy skin disease occurred in Egypt at 2006. The causative agent is lumpy skin virus. Okay, it is one. The second cause and main one is introduction of animals from Ethiopia at that time and allow these animals distributed throughout the country. Also, at the time of April, May, June, July, and August, it is a time of hematogenous insects to be distributed. So, multi-factor theory and causal theory here leads to know what's going on. Definition of literal necessary versus sufficient as an important definitions during explanation and understanding of epidemiology. Necessary word is cause is a causal factor. Necessary word means cause is a causal factor, by means that the disease will not occur without presence of the factor. The example here is presence of Mycobacterium juni for Juni's disease. Sufficient word means cause is the minimum of the condition. by means that presence of condition, factors, or events always needed to produce the outcome of a thesis. Our example here is Mycoplasma mycoides subspecies mycoides for occurrence of contagious bovine pleuropneumonia. As example, Egypt now is free from this disease. So, to introduce an animal infected or the germs of this Mycoplasma mycoides subspecies mycoides is necessary with other factors such as crowdedness, decrease in immune status, not presence of vaccination program for control of such emerging and transboundary diseases. The difference between necessary and sufficient is very important in the following series for understanding the diseases. Epidemiology series will be continued, so please subscribe the channel to reach to the rest of epidemiology series. If you like this video, please give like. If you have any comment or any question, please write it within the video and I will answer after a while.